I love that you're printing graphs in this scenario. It's way old school. I'm
a little. Welcome to the Misfit Behaviorists podcast. Join your hosts, Audra Jensen and Caitlin Beltran, here to bring you evidence-based strategies with a student-centered focus. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Misfit Behaviorists. Glad to be here. We are going to be talking about some IEP goal materials collection, how to organize things today, how to streamline the materials and keep all your data flowing nicely.
That's right. And remember to join our Facebook group, the Misfit Behaviorists, if you haven't already, because for almost every episode, we post a free resource in our file library. And I know there's going to be a good one after tonight.
There is. So whether you are a special education teacher or an ABA therapist or a parent supporting a child with an IEP, I know how overwhelming it can be to juggle all the materials. From the very beginning, when we started in this process, when Isaac was little, having just so many materials, I've seen different systems used over the years. And so today I thought I'd maybe share some of my own kind of tried and true systems. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of these systems before, but it's to hopefully bring back a little sanity in the process, to help you actually enjoy working, because I know I have been one with all my materials in my arms, trying to carry everything, especially those early learners that have so many manipulatives and reinforcers. And so I was thinking about how can I help people think about how to organize that material. So Caitlin, what's your favorite way to keep all of your materials organized?
I think just constantly investing in binders and roll cards. When I was teaching, I would have, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners do, every kid had a station with their own binder and their own roll cart. And then I would be like crazy and label every piece of material with their initials, what drawer number it went in their roll cart. So just those generic systems, I think, that keep us all sane.
Yeah, those are the ones. So I thought maybe I'd go over quickly kind of the basics. I'm a big believer in having a few key things in your IEP toolkit. So before I show you the systems that I've used, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, this is one where I'm going to be showing a lot of things. So you might want to go over and check us out on YouTube. And that's YouTube at the Misfit Behaviorists. You can find this episode and the other ones there. But I will try to describe. And if I'm not describing something, Caitlin, just jump in and say, hey, so if you're not watching, this is what I'm showing. So that would be great. So here are a couple of things that I like to have in all of my IEP processes. Like the first thing is an IEP at a glance. I don't know if you can see that. I like to take, because, IEPs can be really, really long. And for staff or parents or somebody, they're not going to have the chance to review these on a regular basis because they're really long. And so I like to take an IEP, a fresh one that I've created, and then I use like a 1 to 2 page little snapshot of what it is. And it has just basically their service minutes, accommodations that they're required to have, and then just very quickly the goal and what their progress is. I like to try to keep it down to 1 page. It can go on a clipboard or in their data binder. And then if they have a BIP, then there's also a section that I put in just a quick synopsis of the BIP as well. So those behavior plans are always forefront in the minds of the staff. So that's the first thing. Another thing is, of course, data sheets. So whether you're using digital data, or you're using like your full size, I also like to create the little tiny ones. These are really good for the mini notebooks or the mini clipboards that can be carried around. Some of these mini clipboards also have little spots for your lanyard. So a lot of my staff would put these on the lanyard, which makes it really easy to carry the data around. That's a really nice one. Then I like to have a checkoff sheet, which has all of the goals just written down like this. And then each day that a staff is working with a student, they can check off the programs or the goals that they worked on. And this just helps us make sure we're not missing anything. If we don't have a specific day-to-day that we're tracking everything, this is a way, especially with your students who are doing a lot of skill acquisition. Some of our IEPs have a lot of goals. And so we want to make sure we're not kind of accidentally missing something over the course of time. And so this is a very quick way. If I have several staff with a student, they can go there and check the ones. And then when I pick up this, I can see, oh no, we keep forgetting, or we're not having an opportunity to work on eating with a fork. So next time we have snack, let's make sure we have a snack where they can practice stabbing the fork or whatever it is. So I like having a quick checkoff sheet. And then, of course, data graphs, anything you're using for tracking progress in that kind of visual way to make sure that we are seeing the progress or making changes that need to happen. And we are doing that kind of in as real time as possible.
I love that you're printing graphs in this scenario. It's way old school. Like,
I'm a little old school.
I don't know. It's funny because when I started in the public school, I was constantly printing graphs and I was like, oh, I'm the only one that wants to see these graphs. So, but now I just keep, on my computer, and obviously with Google, I'm just sharing more easily. But back in the day, I would print the graphs. But I love the master list. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that has lessened over time of printing those graphs because we do a lot more digital data today. The advantage kind of the printed one is you have a notebook and it's moving around, and wherever you are, you can kind of flip through what's going on. But definitely over the course of the years, that's becoming less and less. We also want to save some of the trees, so we want to print less and less just because this materials and ink, especially if you're printing out of school materials, that is something you have to consider.
Very true. But it's true. I remember that's kind of why I just chuckled, because back in the day, we all had to print the graphs after each quarter. And then it was kind of cool because depending on how often we cleaned out the old ones, like a staff member, maybe 2 classrooms down the road, might just want to be like, oh my gosh, wow, that's when he was toilet trained, or see that little bump of progress that, like, you don't really get that anymore because no one's looking, like, browsing digital libraries. You're just going to the one you want.
Right.
But I was going to say, I love the master checklist because we talked about in a previous episode how, you do not have to take data on every single goal every single day, and usually not even close. But I never thought of, like, my staff usually just keep the notebooks open as they're practicing if it's not a data day. But I love the checkoff because it kind of just makes you feel a little bit more accountable that you hit just a broad range of goals for that day.
Right. I will put that, and I'll put the IEP at a glance that I have. I'll put those in the Facebook group so anybody can access those. And they're both very quick and easy little helpers that you can use. All right, so let's get to the heart of it, how to wrangle the materials. I have seen over the course of many years several different processes, and I've used a bunch of different ones. So it's really going to be whatever works for you and your strengths, and especially what works for the student that you're working on or you're working with, because every student's going to be a little bit different. And that's really important. You may have in one classroom several different kinds of students. You may have different methods for each of them. You may have one system for everybody, or you may have multiple systems for the variety of students you have. I think that's important to keep in mind that it can change. Oh, I forgot this one too. Do you have these everywhere in your room? The little, like, this are fishing tackle boxes.
Or
These
craft.
are amazing. Oh yeah, crafting ones.
And then people who like bead or necklace, and we used to keep all the little treats in there.
That is the other thing I love to have in all of my. So this one I have just token boards. So I have a whole bunch of token boards that slip into this one because it's a really big one. And then all of the little pieces from the token boards fit into there. There's only a few in there right now, but that's another thing I love to have. So there's another show and tell. So the first method is the fat notebook, the classic 3-ring binder. It is the tried and true tested binder that we all use. Sheet protectors are your friends here. These are perfect for mobile students or students who have goals with minimal material. So you have your data notebook, and then each of your little sheet protectors can hold your data, your graphs, in addition to any materials that fit within that. And so I like to just use sheet protectors for these, like emotions cards and stuff like that. So that one works really well. This is probably the one in schools that I've used the most. It's also really beneficial for students who can move around themselves and can grab their own notebook and take it somewhere with them. So I like the data notebook for that reason.
The data notebook is my favorite, and I love customizing each notebook for each student and putting something, maybe like a picture of the student on the front that you can see from like across the room.
Excellent. I love that. Okay, so method number 2 I like is the dry erase sleeve. You can get them off of Amazon, but this little system, and this is really good. This fits in the goal sheet, the data, everything right inside of it, one for each goal. This one is really good if you have students who you want to keep, different goals for different students in different places throughout the room. So like you could have all of your reading goals, each labeled with the student and what the goal is. You could have all those in the reading center and then all the math ones over here. And these are really good to be portable. I use these also with, you can get a little ring. They usually have a hole in the middle, and these also can be portable for the student to carry around. I think it's really good for them to use to start to manage their own materials. But these are just really nice because they can hold more than like a sheet protector can, and a little bit bigger size, and everything can be self-contained in there. And I usually will put, this one isn't a good example, but I usually will put, the front sheet will have the student's name and what the goal is. So it's really easy to flip through for a staff to grab the one that they want. And these I've also put into the third method that I'll show you in a second, the document box. So these can all fit into there, so they can, like if a student has a whole bunch of those, they can be carried around throughout the room if needed.
So we use those dry erase sheet protectors. Is that what they're called? Like sleeves?
Yeah.
A lot. I actually never thought of using them that way, where you would put everything into the sleeve for that program. So like data sheet, like pictures if it's tacting, like future materials, whatever. So then I could picture it all laying out on the shelf.
And what I like to do, speaking of that, is like materials. I'll use like not 3-ring binders, the little metal rings. And so I'll use little teeny post-it notes that will say the current set. And so a staff can grab out the current set of materials that they're working on. And then in addition, in that sleeve, I'll have other ones that will say next set or set 3 or set 4 or something. So that they've all been trained on how to, if they look at the data and the last 3 people have hit 80% or above, they can actually move on to the next set as long as it's on the data sheet and they know what it is, and all the materials are already there for them, so they can pull it out.
Yeah, I like doing that too when we can. It's just preparing those future materials. Like if you're putting in a program for whatever, tacting, just print all those pictures at once, because I used to print like 3 or 5 at a time, and then it's just so disjointed if they do move up early or they're waiting on you, or you don't know who's in charge of the materials. Just having a system is great.
Also, you can have mastered materials in there, and then you can pull them out for maintenance checks and integrating them with all the other programs you're working on, which is really nice to have all those materials easy to access there. All right, so method number 3 is the portable box. And that is, I have a couple of them here. You can get these off Amazon or any office supply store. These are really good for students who are in a heavy skill acquisition phase, where they have a lot of materials. Those are your early learners who are working on identifying objects, reinforcers that can be stowed away here. I actually had one that most of these have, and this one doesn't have a little hole here that you can actually lock. And I've had to lock a couple of these for students.
Just to describe this for anyone not watching, what would you call this if you were Googling this or looking at like a portable file box?
It is called like a portable box file or file folder box. And it fits the hanging folders in it, those green folders that we all know that hang in file folders. And then I use those plus a manila folder in those that can have either the goals and the data, the graphs and everything, as well as any of the materials. So, and then this one, like I said, this one is my favorite. This one has a top, which is where you can put your pencils and your timers and little fruit snacks if you need one.
I wish I had thought of this method when I was doing ABA therapy in the home and traveling home to home, rather than the binders where I was trying to shove everything in.
We used to have in the clinic, we had shelves and shelves of these, and they all had every student's name. So when a student came in, we would go to the file folder. We would go to the file folder shelving, I don't know what else to call it, and they would find their box, would have their name on it, and take the box down. And that's something you can do in schools as well, is have everybody's boxes there. And it also helps them learn their names and identify that type of thing. Here's another one. This one is a little bit longer, and you can get the legal size to fit in this one. This just gives you a little bit more space this way. But seriously, you can throw everything in there from all your materials. I have a little whiteboard marker, games, and my favorite little story. And then, like I said, each one has the folder itself, and then within that you can have all of your data and your programs, as well as any stimuli that you need.
I love that.
Okay, so if you even have, those are my three methods that I've used the most. But you mentioned another one that made me think this is another one I use, is those rolling carts. Those are the ones that have multiple drawers that are long, tall things, and you can have them labeled for each of the students, each of the goals, that have all the materials in it. The rolling carts that have the wheels on them that you can roll around throughout the room, those are great. They're the ones that's really good for a teach method if you're running a classroom that has a lot of independent work tasks and stuff, and teaching students how to do that. Moving from one drawer with the stuff that they're working on, once they're finished with it, moving into the next drawer. Those are all really good methods. And don't underestimate the use of those little photo boxes. I have them around here somewhere, but those little photo boxes for stimuli, and those little metal rings. If you don't have photo boxes, you just put a little hole punch into all your stimuli and throw a little metal ring in there, and that keeps them organized as well.
I love those. We used to do with our roll carts, like everybody had their own, and then all the staff knew, but we would label it like top drawer was reinforcers, middle drawer was like pens, pencils, etc., and then the bottom was like the file folders where we'd keep all the materials in them.
Yes, excellent. So those were my ideas. My gem this week really is just to remember that there's no one size fits all. You need to experiment, find out what works for you and your students and the workflow of your classroom. The goal is to make working on the IEPs easier, even a little fun, and ultimately see that your learners are making the progress that you want to see them make. So if you have your favorite system, we'd love to hear about it. Hop onto the Facebook group, or if you're watching this on YouTube, throw a comment in there or email us, whatever. We'd love to hear you had some creative ideas and how to manage those materials. I know walking through a classroom or going from space to space and trying to carry all of the materials a lot of times is overwhelming. So creative ideas are great.
Absolutely. And speaking of social media, don't forget to join our Facebook group, Misfit Behaviorists, because we'll be posting that checklist that Audra mentioned, and also I think the IEP goal sheet. So those will be in the file library after this week. Definitely join us next week. We're going to have a guest talking about experiences working as a BCBA in a public school district. So be sure to listen for that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Misfit Behaviorists. And be sure to tune in next week for more tips and tricks. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.